What is up, everybody? Today we're going to be talking about the startup costs. How much money do you need to have in order to start an adult daycare center that's somewhere between, say, 6,000 and 8,000 square feet? But first, hey, come here. Can you help me out a little bit? Do me a favor, okay? Would you just drop a like or a comment or subscribe? Do something. Just show a little love, because we're doing all this stuff for free. We're not really asking anything of you guys. We want to educate the public. We want to help people and other business owners understand what it takes to start their own business in senior care, and specifically in the adult daycare space. So do me a favor, drop a like, comment, subscribe, show some love, and let's get right into it. So today we're gonna be talking about a 6,000 to 8,000 square foot adult daycare center, and the approximate cost to get a center of this size started is really gonna be somewhere in the range of $300,000 and $600,000. When you're thinking about the type of center that you're trying to open, just keep in mind that in most cases, I'm talking about a private pay adult daycare center that's focusing on the private pay audience, that's focusing on the private pay clientele. And so some of these costs might be different than maybe what you might need if you were opening up a kind of Medicaid focused adult daycare center. So I don't want to confuse anyone. I want to make sure that it's very clear that when we're looking at some of these costs, if you come across somebody that's like, hey, I can do it for a lot less, or I don't think it's gonna cost that much, understand that their methodology might be way different than mine. But we are focusing on a private pay customer base. When you think of Right at Home, Home Instead Senior Care, Bright Start Care, a lot of these home care agencies that are being used by individuals who are paying privately for these services, that's the exact consumer that we're going after, that we are helping, except in an adult daycare center setting. That being said, we're gonna walk through the two different types of costs. We're gonna be talking about the startup costs. Like, these are the costs that you're gonna incur. Typically, they're a one-time event. Typically it might be an asset of some sort, but it's gonna happen probably in advance of you actually opening your doors, being licensed, and then offering your services. And so we'll talk about startup costs and construction, and then we'll talk about the working capital. The working capital is gonna be the money that you're gonna need to fuel or fund the business through those first 6 months of operation. I've done kind of a scenario that paints like a working capital, or having enough working capital for 6 months. You might want to pad it even more if it's the first time that you've been in business for yourself, or if it's the first time that you've opened up an adult daycare center, just to make sure that you have enough oxygen, you have enough fuel in that plane to get the plane off the ground and to get to altitude, okay? So that being said, guys, all right, the first things first, in a 6,000 to 8,000 square foot space, the construction cost is going to be probably one of your largest expenses. And if it's not that, it's definitely gonna also be kind of like on the rent side of things too, because you have a much larger space. But first, let's talk about the startup cost side of the equation. So when we think about construction costs, we're a 6,000 to 8,000 square foot space. We're thinking like 6, 7, 8 bathrooms. We're gonna have multiple different rooms, multiple walls, a lot of plumbing. You're gonna have a lot of HVAC needs. There's gonna be a lot of stuff that's going into this space. If you're gutting the space, there's gonna be a lot of demo work and kind of rerouting of electricity and plumbing and all of these things. So, trying to understand, how extensive of a construction budget do you need to make the repairs or to create an environment that you want to create in the space that you're looking at. This is really important to kind of think through, do you have enough office space? Do you have enough storage space? Do you have enough bathrooms? Do you have enough, room in your kitchen area? Can you support, the needs of, because a space of 6,000 to 8,000 square feet, you might be caring for somewhere between 60 to 80 people a day. And if you're in a space of that size, caring for 60 to 80 people per day, what are those needs going to look like? So taking that into consideration is going to be important. Identifying the number of rooms you're going to need, so that way you can understand, how many walls do I need? How many bathrooms do I need? How much plumbing? How much electrical? How much HVAC needs am I going to have? The next thing you're thinking about is the furniture. Okay, so now you're talking about a much more larger space, where we talked about a smaller space in a 4,000 square foot location, but now we're talking about you know, instead of 30, 40 people a day, we're talking about 60, 80, 90 people a day, depending on how you're licensed and what you're going for, but you're gonna need a lot more furniture. You know, this to me actually still seems a little on the low side. You know, if you were to go buy furniture that like was intended for an assisted living facility like a Brookdale of the world, each one of those chairs with the little rollers on them and the armrest, those are like $450 a piece, and you're gonna need 80 of them. Do the math on that. It'll kind of blow your mind. So you might be looking at some other alternative furniture options, but the reality of it is you're probably going to need somewhere between $35,000 to $55,000 to furnish a space of that size. Again, these are just estimates. A lot of it's going to depend on you. Inventory, these are like games, all of your activity, all of the different types of things that you're going to need for, say, like your meals. Do you have plates, disposable ware? How are you? All your cleaning products. All of those types of things. You have to take that stuff into consideration, because the reality of it is that if you have 60 or 80 people, you might purchase multiple games. Like you might have 2 or 3 of the same game, so that way you can help and help people in smaller groups, because you're not going to play the same game with all 80 people. So you might have to play 3 different groups with 20 people in them, but you might play the same game. So you might be buying duplicates of this inventory and having a lot more, things that have to do with crafts, wood making, the different activities and stuff like that you're gonna need. Office supplies, again, bigger space, it's gonna call for a larger administrative team. Having a larger administrative team is gonna call for more computers and more just office related expenses, okay? Marketing is gonna be so important. A facility of this size, you really want to put a lot of money and effort into the marketing side of it, because you're going to be burning through a lot of cash once you open, because of just the sheer size of a space like this, that you definitely want to make sure that you've got enough marketing dollars allotted towards that expense, so you can start investing in the different types of media, print material, SEO, all of the different ways that you can get that word out there and spread the word and help educate the public that you exist, that you're in town, and how you can help these family caregivers. Again, legal and accounting, not much is gonna change from so maybe about $2,500 to $7,500 to like kind of, set up your QuickBooks, maybe set up your LLC, kind of get all of your documentation, done properly so everything's ready for taxes and things like that. Then insurance is going to definitely be a much greater expense here, because you're caring for more people. The more people you care for, a lot of times your rate might be affected directly based on the number of people that you're caring for on a daily basis. And do you offer transportation? Because that might be an additional expense, that it might even be beyond that $20,000 in insurance expenses. So it's something to consider. Again, too, also, do you own the building or are you leasing it? So what type of insurance do you need to have? Obviously, if you own the building, you have property insurance. But if you don't own the building, you're leasing the space, have you thought about things like rental insurance, or like insurance for the contents inside the building? Okay, the other one's gonna be signage. And of course, a space like this, you're gonna have a lot more signage. You're gonna have a lot more exterior, interior signage, more directional things, pointing people to the restroom, identifying, what certain rooms might be, making sure that, like, on the marquee outside, like, you have signage there. Is there other places that you might be able to put signage, that you might have signage on the main, but you might be in a bigger building now, you might be in a commercial space. There might be certain sign requirements where you're required to have a sign that like looks a certain way, or that meets maybe whatever the requirements are of the space that you're leasing from. And if so, that signage might be more expensive than the banner that you were thinking that you could hang up, because you're gonna have like, maybe channel lettering now, which is gonna cost a lot more, but you don't have much of a choice. It's gonna be part of that required cost going into that signage side of things. A signage like that too, if it's channel marketing, it might even be more than $15,000. Again, these are just rough estimates. So licensing, not too much will change there. Some states are different. Some states don't even have a licensing department for adult daycare. Other states, you might, like in the state of Florida, for instance, you might pay for the size of the center, or you might pay for the type of the center that you are. Another thing that you might take into consideration when going through the licensing process is, in the state of Florida, we have a thing called the proof of financial ability that has to be submitted with your application. That particular form, which is known as a PFA, in almost every case, we always hire someone that has experience with filling out that PFA, do it for us, and that costs might fluctuate, or it might be different depending, again, on the size of the center. So that is something I usually would include in my licensing costs when I'm thinking about it. And I know we paid about $1,800 for ours last time. Again, it might be somewhere in that $2,000 to $3,000 range for something like that, but it's going to ensure that you at least get through one of the hurdles of the licensing process, which is that proof of financial ability. So that being said, on your startup costs, you're gonna be spending somewhere between $257,000 to maybe $427,000 on a space somewhere between that 6,000 and 8,000 square feet. Now, working capital, things to take into consideration. Okay, so you've built the space out. You've constructed the space the way you want. You've put the furniture in it. You've gotten it decorated. It looks beautiful. It's you can't wait now. It's almost opening day. Like, it's getting close. All this excitement, all the hype, everything you've been waiting for, and now you go to open the doors and no one's there. Where is everybody? Hello? Hello? Where did everybody go? Where'd they all go? I thought didn't they know? We're open now. This is probably this is the death trap, okay? Literally, this is all of the excitement that you had going into it. This is where all of a sudden you start to have a little bit of a panic moment, because you're freaking out now because you open the doors and no one's showing up. So you want to make sure for this period of time that you have capitalized yourself properly, to ensure that you do not run out of money before you can finally become profitable. And so things to consider when you're thinking about working capital and budgeting for working capital is, do you have at least 6 months worth of rent on hand? Okay, in a 6,000 to 8,000 square foot space, you're looking at somewhere between $45,000 to $80,000 for those 6 months, to cover the rent payments for those 6 months. And this is after you open, right? I'm talking about forward thinking. So my hope is that on the front end, maybe you got some rent abatement, or you got some tenant improvements that maybe went towards some of these startup costs. So now when you're opening, and those 6 months after you open the doors, you at least have enough money setting aside that you can afford to pay rent for the next 6 months without any money coming in. Okay, just as again, this is just making sure that you have enough fuel in the tank, enough oxygen to get to where you need to go, where you can become profitable. So this is looking at a space, again, 6,000 to 8,000 square feet, that somewhere is renting for somewhere in the neighborhood of 15 to 20 square foot all in. So that might be $10 a square foot plus a $5 cam, or it might be triple net, whatever it might be. But you gotta make sure you're calculating both, what the actual space base rent is, plus whatever other additional expenses you have to pay. What is that per square foot? Have you factored that in? Do you know what that expense is? And then, how much is it gonna cost you for those first 6 months? Again, salaries, payroll, a larger center like this, there's no way that you can just start it up and you can be everything and answer the front desk and be the caregiver and the activity coordinator and do transportation. So you're going to have a staff, you're gonna have people that you're paying on salary that may not have anything to do quite yet, right? So do you have enough money to pay those salaries, to pay those individuals on your team, for those first 6 months? Do you have enough money on hand to meet payroll? The next thing is obviously budgeting for your utilities, and of course your interest expense. So your interest expense on a loan of this size, somewhere between $300,000 to $600,000. If you got a loan from the SBA at a 5.5% interest rate over a 10-year amortization schedule, you might have spent somewhere between $7,500 and $15,000 in interest. So again, making sure, do you have enough money on hand? This is not money you're gonna go get. This is I have this money set aside in a separate account, somewhere between $87,500 and $165,000 set aside for that rainy day. As I open up, that I have that fuel to make these payments. If on day one no one shows up, or if on day one 2 people show up, again, you're making sure that you have enough money to get you through what could be a very, very tough time where you just don't quite have enough revenue coming in to cover all of your expenses. So again, this is for a kind of a mid-size adult daycare center, somewhere between 6,000 and 8,000 square feet. I hope this was helpful. Again, plug in all of your numbers, more specific to what your needs are, but use this as a general guide when trying to come up with your startup and your construction costs, plus your working capital, so you can have an all-in amount of, in this case, when we went through it and broke it down more specifically, this scenario was somewhere between $345,000 and $592,000. So between that $300,000 and $600,000 mark, for a center of this size. So make sure you do your homework, plan in advance, make sure you are always being conservative. Whatever you write down, remember the trick, times 2, and then that should be the number that you actually put when you're calculating or putting together your calculation. So times 2. So you're like, oh, I can do it for 10 grand. No, you can't. You can do it for 20. So anyways, guys, thank you so much for joining me. We'll see you on the next one. Thank you for being a part of the #1 channel for senior care entrepreneurs. And if you'd like to learn more about opening up your own adult daycare, go to adcpro.com. See you guys. Peace out. Hey guys, thank you so much for joining me. If you'd like to learn how to open your own adult daycare center, go to adcpro.com. If you'd like the latest business tips, click here, and make sure you subscribe to our channel, click here. We'll see you guys next time.